Nick and Sophie got married 2 years ago. They met at a concert. Each had come with their own group of friends, and they instantly hit it off from that night on. They never spent a day apart. Nick was serious from the get-go. He already owned his apartment, was ready to build a life with someone. It had taken him a while to find a good match. But with Sophie, everything just clicked. They started talking like old friends right from the start. One day, Nick's buddy Eric called asking if they could meet up. Turns out Eric had just finalized his divorce after 10 years of marriage. For the past few months, he'd been in an aerially dark place, though he'd never opened up much now. He wanted to hang with his closest friends. He didn't say outright that he needed emotional support, but Nick and the others knew he was going through a rough time, so they made plans to head over and see him. Eric looked miserable. Even though he tried to act upbeat, he told them how he'd discovered his wife had been cheating on him for half a year. They didn't care about me or even the kids. How can anyone be so heartless? He said. They stayed with him for a while, and later that evening, Nick returned home. Clearly, Eric still couldn't get this off his mind because he soon sent Nick a link with the message, "Check out this horror. Are they all like this?" Curious, Nick clicked on it. The link led to some online forum where women were casually discussing how they cheated on their husbands. "Oh my God, what am I reading?" Nick thought, horrified, but he kept scrolling. Out of morbid curiosity, some posts said they'd been cheating for ages, but hadn't left their husbands yet because they weren't sure who was better. Others said they'd left for the affair partner and were happily remarried. Even worse were the comments, where the women seemed to find this behavior totally normal. Nick felt uncomfortable, but what really got to him was how nonchalantly these women bragged about sneaking around. Inevitably, Nick's mind turned to his own wife, Sophie. He was sure their relationship was nothing like this. She was loyal, a good person. Sure, they had the occasional argument. Sometimes she got pretty upset, but there was nothing major going on, or so he thought. Then he read a comment that made his hair stand, and this woman wrote about secretly seeing a coworker behind her husband's back. She'd even gone on vacation with the guy, lying to her husband about it being a business trip, and felt incredibly proud of herself. She also advised other women to schedule dates under the guise of hanging out at a friend's place as long as they made sure all their friends were in on the. Nick's brow furrowed deeper with every word. He couldn't help thinking about Sophie. A few months back, she'd suddenly gotten super enthusiastic about visiting her girlfriends like practically every week, when before she'd only meet up with them once in a great while. They all had families and jobs, so it was usually tough to schedule. But now she was going out after work for birthdays, holidays, or just to chat. Plus, there was that time she supposedly had a work trip, even though no one had sent her anywhere for ages before. That Nick wasn't generally paranoid, but something about that comment spooked him. He noticed the forum username and paused. It reminded him a bit of an old screen name Sophie used way back. Wait, he told himself, I'm overthinking this. He slammed the laptop shut, went to the kitchen for a snack, and tried to shake it off. But the next day he was still on edge. Okay, I'll just check the facts for my own peace of mind. He decided. He knew asking Sophie's friends wouldn't help. They'd never Bill. But the business trip angle was interesting. He flipped through his phone contacts and found Madison, an old classmate who happened to work at the same company as Sophie. He rarely spoke to her, but this felt like a special case. He called and politely asked if she could dig up some information. Maddie, I need a favor. Remember back in February, Sophie went out of town for a business trip. Can you find out where she went and who else traveled with her? Nick, I can try, Madison replied, but I can't give you an answer right this second. Let me look into it and call you back. A few hours later, she did so. I found out something. Sophie actually took unpaid leave during those dates. She wasn't on any business trip, at least not through our company, unless she's another job on the side. That's interesting, Nick said, his stomach clenching. Did anybody else take leave around the same time? Weirdly enough, yeah, usually that's a slow period for us. But your coworker Adam also took time off, Madison said softly. Nick started shaking. He hated the thought that his wife had lied, but he couldn't just ignore these facts. Madison had no reason to make this up. The next day, Nick and Sophie were supposed to visit her sister in the hospital. She'd had surgery, and Sophie wanted to see her. Nick drove Sophie to the hospital but said he'd wait in the car. She was so worried about her sister that she accidentally left her phone on the passenger seat. What luck! Nick thought he made sure she was gone. Gone and wouldn't come right back then, unlocked. Her phone scrolled through her contacts and found Adam. He tapped the number, and a male voice answered, "Hey baby, everything okay?" Nick noted the guy's professional phone etiquette sarcasm in full effect. Trying to stay calm, he told Adam who he was. "This is Sophie's husband speaking." "And I know what's going on," he warned Adam that if he dared see Sophie again, there'd be trouble. Nick also bluffed, saying he waist-tight with their boss, so maybe Adam should think carefully about whether he valued his job or hooking up with someone else's wife. He asked if Adam understood him clearly, and the guy caved, sounding totally freaked out. Satisfied, Nick hung up a short while later. Sophie returned to the car. She tried the door handle, intending to get in the front seat, but Nick had locked it. "Hey honey, let me in." She laughed, rattling the door. Nick rolled down the window a crack. "Got anything you'd like to tell me? About that business trip of yours?" No, everything was fine." Why?" she asked, after a tense pause, her eyes darting nervously. "Shame, I thought maybe if you're telling strangers all about it online, you'd tell me too," Nick said with a bitter smirk. "I know about you and Adam. Maybe you should be more careful, bragging about your little escapades. Don't bother coming home. I'll pack up your stuff and send. Later now, get out of here." He handed her phone out the window. "Here, use it to call yourself a ride." Sophie exploded, furious at how dismissive he was. She started shouting, insults banging on the car window. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to hurt them, she yelled that she'd go live with her lover, who was apparently better in bed anyway. Nick just laughed, imagining how she'd soon regret those words. He wished her good luck and drove off. Exactly as Nick suspected, Sophie's lover stopped answering her calls. Thinking maybe Adam's phone was off or something, she hurried over to his place in person. But she couldn't even get inside his building over the intercom. He basically told her he was done with her. Clearly, Nick's threats had worked. Sophie was left in total shock, no place to stay. No husband, no boyfriend, with nowhere else to go. She asked her parents if she could crash with them for a bit, claiming she and Nick had a small fight. They were taken aback, but let their distraught daughter in. Her mom kept saying things would work out, that they'd patch things up. But then Nick showed up with Sophie's belongings, dropping them off like he promised, and her mom's sympathy evaporated fast. Nick bluntly told his mother-in-law that Sophie had been thrown out for cheating. The older woman nearly had a heart attack, and Sophie realized she might have to find somewhere else to live sooner. Rather than later, Nick wasted no time filing for divorce. He just had to wait for the official process to finish. Then he met up again with Eric, the friend who'd clued him in by sending that forum link, and surprisingly thanked him for it. Nick was taking the divorce way better than Eric had. At least Nick and Sophie didn't have any kids in the mix. Plus, Nick had effectively shut down her fallback plan with a boyfriend. Maybe she'd learn Allison. You can't build happiness on someone else's misery.